that's the hardest part is we're taught to judge, and what we need to do is keep an open mind about things and just here's the information, analyze the information and make recommendations rather than judging early on.
That's a good point.
And that's not taught in a computer science program.
Howdy, friends. This is the Ascend UX Podcast, a show about the experience of user experience design. I'm Evan Sunwall.
And I'm Ian Behe. So Evan, I don't know about you, but I often find myself having conversations with people and they naturally lead towards becoming an interview. I share this because I recently had a flashback of one of these moments the other day where I found myself chatting with the grandchildren of my mother's best friend.
Yeah.
And they were really excited. They were telling me about their favorite little video games that they love to play on their parents' phone and how they work. So as we were talking, I had an idea to play naive. So I decided to say, hold on guys, wait, you've been talking about the internet, but what is this thing, the internet? Everybody talks to me about it. What is it? Mm-hmm. So their little excited faces dropped as if they could understand how someone did not understand, yet alone what was the internet. It's interesting to see how they themselves tried to understand what the internet was beyond the realm of the games in their parents' phone. So with some patience on both their end and mine, they went about describing as something that was similar to a physical product that was made and distributed from a factory that you were able to buy and use as you wished. So this exercise, I don't know, it was really fun because it allowed them to take a step back from their everyday interaction with the internet and try to understand how it works, not just what it allowed them to do. I don't know if you've ever had experiences like that, Evan, where you yourself try to take a step back and try to understand how a product in your everyday life works, or if you ever had exchanges with people where you're just like, hey, so wait, what's this about?
I have a lot of that experience with my 5-year-old son, where I ask him to explain something and talk about a tool that he's using, a piece of software or just an experience, and just the innocence, right? Just like, I have no idea. All I can take is the inputs that I see and I put them together in a way that makes sense. And it's really fascinating. I'm struggling right now in the moment trying to think of a situation where I was just astounded by how he described something. But it's kind of really amazing because it's like you don't know all the details and all the mechanics of how something comes together. And I think in some way, because I'm trying to think about how UX education is a little bit of this kind of theme, because it can be like this giant black box for people. I think when I talk to folks at conferences, when I talk to folks at Houston UXPA events, local, regional, professional society, it's easily top 3 question. And it's like, well, what I see is a lot of advertising for courses. I see a lot of these services that teach UX, they'll help you get that job. And all you see is that kind of experience. And it's like, but the deeper issues, the things that actually kind of really matter to making that good choice, they don't see that. They're not aware. Maybe they're doing some other job right now, and it's just not clear. And so they see, like, I do A to B to C, and I'll end up here, and that works, right? And it's like, well, no, there's a lot more nuance to that. And I think it's unnecessarily complex. It's unfortunately complex right now, where we're in the maturity of the industry. And it's it's funny, and it's interesting, and it's also I don't know, it's a little sad for me too. It's unnecessarily frustrating. How did you react when you heard their answer?
Well, I thought it was really cute, actually, that they took something that was so abstract and they related it back to something that they could figure out. It was for them, they go to the store, they pick up this package, which is the internet, and they unravel it and they go play with it. So I thought it was a really fun exercise. And I think that's a part what we do every day in our field as designers. We have to kind of retro engineer to understand how things work. But I think this could be it's interesting exercise for people who are not designers also, to just kind of take a step back and try to understand how the world around us works, and perhaps also the people who conceptualize that experience that you have either with a product or service.
Yeah, listening, just asking, stepping back, asking some questions. It's like, what do you think? Like probing a little more instead of, just trying to explain or otherwise, like, that's not right. It's actually like more like this, but really listening and just taking a breath is a pretty powerful technique.
Yeah, to listen, to observe, and I guess that just leads to learning, the endless experience of
Yeah.
learning. So today, on the topic of learning, we'll be discussing an important topic in UX, education. So for those currently in the field or wishing to get into UX, it can be very overwhelming to decide on which educational path to take. From the bevy of university degrees, certifications, boot camps, massive online courses, there are a lot of educational options available today. Fortunately, we have a special guest to help us today. Angela Schmeidel Randall has more than a decade of consulting and over 20 years in user experience industry. As is the founding principal at Normal Modes and UX Training, she and her team provide outside research, coaching, and training to organizations that want to improve experiences with their products and services. She specializes in complex, data-driven, mission-critical experiences with clients including Fortune 100 companies, government agencies, venture-backed startups in a variety of industries. Angela is a graduate of University of St. Thomas and Rice University. She's also a graduate of Rice's Dewar Institute for New Leaders. Angela currently teaches at Kent State University's graduate degree program for user experience design and at Lilly, Rice University's Jones School of Business. Her mission is to change the world, one experience at a time. Welcome, Angela. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, first question, how might students or younger people evaluate university UX programs today? What are the most important variables for you to help somebody distinguish what could be the right program for them?
Well, I mean, I think personally, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's something that you need to, first, if you're a student, you need to think, okay, what is my, where am I today? What sort of skills and experience do I have today? And for somebody who is maybe an undergrad who doesn't really, and maybe in a liberal arts type of program, right? They're undergrad in history, which there are a whole lot of those kind of UX people existing today. That background is a lot different than, say, somebody who's got a PhD in applied cognitive psychology. Like the skills and experiences there, or somebody who's coming out of an associate's program in visual design. Those, depending on where you're at, will help direct you to where you want to be. So, if let's talk about the PhDs in applied cognitive psychology, because there are a lot of them. And so a lot of times they have a tremendous amount of human factors experience. They have a tremendous amount of experience conducting research. And so, when we think about UX, we think of generally like two types of people. We think of designers and we think of researchers. And so those applied cognitive psychologists make really good researchers with some caveats. And so they're going to want to focus on that UX research pathway. But those people that are coming out of maybe an associate's program in visual design, they're going to want to start out in the visual design world and go down that path. So it's really a matter of knowing where you are first and evaluate where you are, understanding what your persona is. And then what you're going to be doing is you're going to look at programs to see, how can I supplement my education? So that, person from the associate's program, eventually one of the things that would be nice for them is to get some supplemental training, open market training. You don't have to go to a university for this, on user experience, so more targeted training, because it's going to be easier for them to move into a design job because they already have a beautiful portfolio. They need to get some supplemental training, maybe in technology, or supplemental training in research, or supplemental training in ethnography. Identifying those blind spots or those spots in their education that they're missing is important. And then in the case of the applied cognitive psychologist, a lot of that is going to be going back and immersing oneself in the applied world of working inside of an organization. Academia is a hugely different beast, and what you get trained for in a PhD program is hugely different than what you get trained for in maybe an associate's program. So you need to look and see, like, what are the gaps in my education? the other thing about those PhDs is like, it's Dunning-Kruger, right? You know a lot about one thing, but sometimes you have a really hard time understanding what you don't know. That there are things that you don't know. I find that the PhD programs and then also the military, they're not always as good at identifying what they don't know.
Start with kind of a goal about, it sounds like, research, like really heavy UX oriented research in terms of like talking with users, maybe doing some statistics, doing ethnography, or maybe design oriented careers, UX oriented careers, where they're really heavy on the prototyping, design and conceptualization, those visual design skills. Does this seem like two kind of major tracks to kind of focus as kind of a goal in the UX realm because they're a little distinctive?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you think about, which box do I fit inside of? Do I fit in the site designer box, or do I fit in general? There's exceptions to this, and we'll talk about a third one in a minute. But do I fit in the designer box, or do I fit in the researcher box? And so understanding like which one you're starting out at, and then evaluating programs based on where you want to go. So like I teach at Kent State, I teach in a Master's of User Experience Design program, and it is run out of the Information School, which used to be Library Science at Kent State. And I'm not speaking on behalf of Kent State at this point, I have to say. So our program tends to be very rich in research and ethnography and information architecture and design patterns and, that sort of thing. And our program is very strong in that area. So if you need to supplement your education with those kinds of areas, that's a good fit for you. It's also a good overview fit to anytime you can get a master's degree that confers upon it some legitimacy, that sort of thing.
So evaluating those programs, whether it be taking stock of what you've got right now, whether it be I have a little technology, I can code a little bit, or maybe I've done some cognitive psychology, I've run studies, or maybe I have really great visual design skills. Take stock of the skills you have. But if you're going to pursue further education or making a decision of like what your bachelor should be or something like that, how do you evaluate programs that you may be looking at, university kind of programs? How do you evaluate them? Because it's really confusing, right? It's hard to even find because it's so many different labels. How do you figure that out? How do you identify, oh, that's maybe a good match for me or what I want to focus on?
There aren't a whole lot of UX programs because UX is like this strange interdisciplinary beast. Especially, there's not any at the undergraduate level, though there's a lot of interest, I think, at this point from students about getting undergraduate education in user experience. I've anecdotally heard that. I've heard that from, high school students, that sort of thing. So there is that sort of interest there. There aren't very many master's programs, and what those master's programs excel at varies. And so based on where you are, you want to select a program that meets that need.
So like, what are the major schools that tend to house UX programs, at least in the United States?
Oh, Evan, you're going to have me do research. I'm going to have to go to the Google.
Well, okay. So the ones okay. All right. I'll help. I'll do one better for you. So I'm going to throw this out there. If people want to know, at least the United States programs, what is out there, because it's a little daunting, topuxschools.com. That is a great resource. It's a Google designer made it. It's really impressive. It's a pretty comprehensive listing of all different programs, online courses, master's degree programs, and everything. Check it out. It's really neat. And it can kind of link you out to these different schools and give you even the pricing of everything. It's really cool. It's a crazy, awesome UX. I love that a UX designer like looked at this and like, I want to make a system to kind of improve this user experience of like, how the heck do I learn more about user experience? I love that. So check that out. Anyway.
Oh yeah. This is awesome. I'm there now. Yeah, there's, human computer interaction is a good pathway if you want to be a researcher. Typically, human computer interaction is in the applied cognitive psychology program or an applied psychology program. Some interaction design masters. If you want to be an information architect, a library science degree isn't bad. There's a subset of UX that doesn't get talked about, and it's UX for libraries. Librarians are on it in terms of UX and really kind of driving some of the activity, but the two schools of thought don't typically meet. I have an assessment on UX dot training that will go in, it's free, and will go in and help you evaluate what skills you have and what your capabilities are. And it's based on something Ravi and I had worked on, and I just took and ran with it. And what it does is it says, okay, these are the areas of expertise inside of UX. Here's the foundational knowledge. Here's the stuff you need to be a leader, to be a leader, you don't have to be very far into your career. You can be a leader very early in your career by having good work habits and self-awareness and that sort of thing. So being a leader isn't something you have to save till the last minute. And you can cultivate leadership even at the undergrad level at universities. Rice has a really good leadership program with the Door Institute and helping students at Rice become leaders through coaching. And so if you do that assessment, then you can get a sense of okay, here's what I know that I know, and here's what I don't know. And there are specific recommendations based on what you enter in the system. It's kind of a long assessment, but it's very thorough. I'm a very thorough person. And it has specific, this is probable job titles. This is approximately what you'll make. These are things that you can do to further your career at this point in time. And these are all the areas comprehensively that you have now and where you're weak.
And anyone can do that?
Anyone can do that, and it's free. We don't charge for that because I think it's important to know where you're at and be able to assess that. And honestly, I get that question so often that it automates a problem for me. People want to know, what do I do next? Well, you can go and fill out this form and you can enter in your information and it will give you a prescriptive list of things that you can do next. It's not going to give you schools. It's not going to give you specific training classes. It will tell you the areas where you're strong and where you're weak.
So we could definitely put that in the show notes, link out to that. And if people want to take that assessment and get a sense of their strengths and weaknesses to help them kind of inform what kind of next steps you want to take with your career, that could be really helpful. So do you think, in your opinion, try to find something that's a little more diametrically opposite to where you may already be strong? So if you're someone who has a psych, who's maybe got some psych training or maybe a degree, maybe you should focus more on a program that kind of speaks more to design skill, or to try to complement that. If they're trying to go more design on a design track, is there a way that you want to kind of counterbalance what you may already have, or the experiences you already have?
So I think that the first thing that you need to do is you need to become kind of a journeyman level expert of, so if you think about, there's the novice, there's apprentice, there's a journeyman, there's the master. If you're applied cognitive psychology, you're a master in applied cognitive psychology, and you're probably an apprentice, a late stage apprentice in UX research. And so we want to build out and make sure you've done some UX research so you're solidly journeyman in that area, because there is a difference. And so my advice to people is always develop one solid area of expertise, the journeyman level, where you can just do it almost without having to think about it, and then go in and add in other areas. UX is such an interdisciplinary area. You really have to have one thing that you're kind of good at, or an area of expertise, and then use that to build things on. So I think it's called a T-shaped career path. You have one area where you have a tremendous amount of depth, and then you want to go in and add on things as you need to.
Okay.
And then, understanding what you're good at, understanding where you want to work. There are going to be shorter pathways depending on what your background is. My background is a subject matter expert, but I worked with large data sets as a subject matter expert. And so that's how I ended up being a subject matter expert or a UX person that specializes in large data-driven applications, mission critical stuff, because that's what I always did. And so understanding like what your strength is and what you like working on, I find that those applied cognitive psychologists tend to do pretty well with also the large data-driven applications, because those applied cognitive psychology programs are really strong with the math and they're already used to working with large data sets. But other folks, like, it's really the difference between enterprise applications, business to business, and business to consumer. What space are you going to go into, and understanding what your aptitudes are there as well.
Okay.
You set me in front of like business to consumer, a lot of business to consumer stuff. And I'm like, here's some data, but this is really not enough complexity for me to be able to give you advice.
So Angela, you're saying that UX is a very interdisciplinary field, and I totally agree with you. But my question is, as we come from so many different educational backgrounds, for example, I come from a sociology, industrial design background. Evan, you come from more of a programming background. Is it really necessary for someone to go and get UX training? Or can we kind of just perhaps learn as we go by taking a mismatch of what we already have from our past education?
I believe you need some sort of training. The one path I think that may not need training, as much training, is the folks coming out of those associates of arts and visual design. Specifically, like the one I have in mind is from the Art Institute. Like those folks come out with enough knowledge, usually to get started and pretty seamlessly figure it out. And that's not a plug for the Art Institute. That's just, in my observation, the associates of arts, they have constraints that I don't want to give the impression that they don't. But in terms of like a UX career, starting out there or at a community college is a really great way to get some foundational skills. Otherwise, I think that you do need some supplemental education, because most of our education system is not set up the way that UX thinks about problems. Most of our education system is just push, 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 push. They talked about differentiation, but there's really very little tolerance for individual differences in meeting students really where they are. They want to put out 1,000, 1,500 of roughly the same student. And so that's the education kids are getting from the time they enter the school system, right? And UX is not at all about that. UX is about taking each student, evaluating where they are, maybe putting them in groups of similarities and cognitive style or whatever else, and then meeting them where they are and trying to achieve a goal, which is a generalized good education. And so this mental model is so pervasive in the education industry that, it's difficult for students that are coming out of it to think differently. It's also, if users don't understand something, there's still the belief from on the software development side and even on the user side that if they can't do something, it's because they're stupid. The user is stupid, not because it's poorly programmed. And so, I think that in general, you need to go back to school to learn that different way of thinking and go back and learn how to observe people and how to have that humility about, saying that you don't understand something or doing something and watching it fail and being okay with that. Because right now, failure, as in the America, is not a cultural attribute that we aspire to. Right. And so learning how to fail and fail successfully, these are all things that you're going to get in a UX program.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the piece, that soft skills piece that you want to definitely supplement your education with.
Yeah. You're going to get a slice. Like, so my background was computer science. I got a slice of development. I didn't like it very much, but I understand how software was made. I made a little software, right? And so whatever your background is, whatever you had studied, you're going to have that slice, but it is a kind of collection of multidisciplinary skills. I see UX designers, they strive, they do really well, presentations, communication, a lot of emotional intelligence type skills can become very useful very quickly, depending on the maturity of the organization you're working in. The coding element, certainly a part of it, the design and composing, understanding Gestalt theory and kind of putting things together. And also, what was a tremendous gap for me was talking to other humans about their experience. I never had any training in ethnographic research or qualitative research. No, it never came up. Why on earth would a computer scientist need to do that type of stuff? We talk to machines, we focus on the algorithms and things. So you're gonna have gaps, and being aware of those gaps and focusing on them in many different ways, right? Like you said, like community college can be a very affordable option to kind of fill in some of those gaps. There's online training courses, and it's not about folks telling like, hey, this is the best one, go do this one, because there's just simply too many. But being aware where your gaps are and looking at what fits your life circumstance, your finances, your time, is like, if I want to commit and try to get there, getting a little foundational education in some of these gap areas can be very useful.
Like the number one activity I like people to do, or the two activities, is really exercises and listening and exercises and observing. And those are two different skills. And so listening, students, like anybody can do this, like cultivating a practice of just open-mindedly listening, because that's a foundational UX skill. If you can't do that, then you're not going to be able to do design. You're not going to be able to do research. So, cultivating that capacity to listen without judgment, to hear people, to repeat back what has been heard, I think is hugely important. And then to be able to go in and observe. And so like my students at Kent, like one of their activities I have them do is I'm like, you need to go to a coffee shop and you want to spend an hour there, or go to the mall or go somewhere else, which is very difficult right now, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But thank gosh, it's not an assignment they have this semester. But go to the grocery store. How many people are wearing masks? How many people are not wearing masks? What are they wearing? Are they, what is the general age? What is the mix of men to women in the grocery store? Go to a second grocery store. How is that different than the first? And what you're trying to do is judge. You're just collecting data. That's the hardest part, is we're taught to judge, and what we need to do is keep an open mind about things and just, here's the information, analyze the information and make recommendations rather than judging early on.
That's a good point.
And that's not taught in a computer science program. Like that observing, that collecting feedback from users. Like I think that should be like something they're taught as freshmen. Like it should be one of your first classes, is going out and conducting user research, not even design. Research.
That would be cool. I think I would have had a much different educational path. I probably would have enjoyed it a little more if that was part of it. But I think that's a good point. Is that the jumping to conclusions, that kind of tendency, and you're kind of deprogramming that a little bit. You're trying to like diffuse that and be like, we just need to get some information. Let's lay it on the table and see what is happening. Because a lot of what you're trying to do in an organization is to kind of diffuse people's personal opinions about certain things, or they've invested a lot in this product. They're the founder, they're a visionary. They love their idea. It's precious. They don't want it to be hurt. And you're just like, hey, I'm not trying to say you're foolish or this is bad. I'm just trying to say there's some realities out there that we need to kind of look at, go gather, bring back in, and just look at it dispassionately and say, what can we do about this? And that's really powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think those exercises can be so rich because it could also help us just to become observant of our environment in which we are members of. So yeah, I think it's great exercises to do, especially early on, the better.
Absolutely. Like the earlier on, and creating inside of organizations, creating a culture where that's acceptable. Anything we can do to be mindful of our biases and accept what's happening around us as neither good nor bad, but just it is what it is. Not only does that benefit us professionally, it benefits the companies, but it benefits us personally too.
Yeah, it's also going from that shift to being subjective, which we often are, and learning how to become objective and distancing yourself perhaps from your thoughts and just really observing everything in its entirety before you make your assumptions.
Angel's got a lot more to share. We're going to pick up the discussion in part 2 of UX education. Take care, everyone. Thanks. Thanks for listening to the Ascend UX podcast, a show made by the user experience team at Pros, a software company in Houston, Texas that develops AI-powered solutions for businesses. Learn more at pros.com/UX. That's PROS.com/UX. Our main theme music is by Ultravice. You can listen to more of his work at soundcloud.com/Ultravice. Also, thanks to Lakey Inspired for his music as well. You can listen to more of his work at soundcloud.com/Lakey Inspired. And special thanks to our editor and producer, Brandon Robinson. Stay gritty, friends.